Hello, welcome back to Piers Rocks. Today, a treat especial. We're going to take a look at this Commodore 1551 disk drive. While the 1551 might just look like a newer version of the 1541, there's a much bigger difference that's visible on the rear of drives. On the 1541, we have the now pretty familiar serial ports known as the IEC ports on the back of this drive for connecting to the VIC-20 and Commodore 64. The 1551 doesn't have those ports. Instead, it has a cable and this cartridge unit connected to it. This supports different computers to the 1541. Specifically, it supports the Commodore 16 and Commodore Plus 4. Before we plug it in and test it, let's take a look inside. I have the case screws out, so we'll take a look inside. So we can immediately see that the 1551 has a much shorter circuit board than many of the 1541s in existence. I assume that's because this was a later drive and Commodore had cost reduced the boards down to this level by this point. In terms of the hardware architecture, we've got a 6510 processor. This is a slightly different variant to the stock 6502 that's used in the 1541 and is also the processor that's used in the Commodore 64. We've got a 6525 interface adapter chip. Now this actually combines the functionality of the two 6522 vias from the 1541 into a single chip, and more importantly, it actually allowed Commodore to move forward with a parallel interface into this drive rather than the serial interface that's used on the 1541, and increases speeds by I think about 4 times over the stock 1541. We've got the EEPROM, we've got, I think that's the RAM, and then we've got a couple of other, we've got an IC and we've got the gate array that Commodore used on many of their later drives. The other thing to note is that this has the Mitsumi or Newtronics drive mechanism in it. This could be a problem because the read-write heads in these units are much more prone to fail than the AUX mechanisms that are in most of my 1541 drives. If this is failed, it's not a big problem. I do have a replacement one of these that I can pillage from one of my 1541 drives. But to check whether that's likely to be an issue, we'll just test the resistances of the drive heads on this connector now using the multimeter. So the way to test these is put your multimeter onto ohms mode and then test between every pair of connections on the connector. Now from memory these should all be between about 11 and 32 ohms between every pair. So that's showing 15 kiloohms, which is a bit on the high side. That's 15 kiloohms. That's 14, so that looks right. And then between pin 5 and all the other pins, 15, 11, and 25. So there may be a problem with this unit, but I'll put it back together and test it out. I have the 1551 plugged into the rear of the Plus 4. I haven't bothered putting the lid back on in case I need to make any fixes to this drive. Turn the drive on. So for the most part that was a normal boot. We heard the motor spin. The red light did not come on the drive unit, which I would have expected, but then the motor stopped. We've also got a power light on, so I'm pretty sure that this unit has booted and we will at least be able to communicate with it from the Plus 4. I turn the Plus 4 on, we should see the drive reset again. We did not, so it could be that the 1551 doesn't reset when the Plus 4 is turned on because the reset is not plumbed through using the parallel interface, although I would have expected that to have happened. We'll just try and communicate with the disk drive now. Just do a reset of the drive. No, so we cannot talk to the drive. The first thing I shall do is clean the contacts on the cartridge with a bit of alcohol. It's coming away, yeah, fairly filthy. I shall also spray a bit of contact cleaner into the rear of the +4. Okay, contacts cleaned on the cartridge and on the +4 connector. Let's try again. Okay, this time the drive reset when the +4 was turned on, so that's a good sign. Let's see if we can communicate with the drive. No, we cannot. Definitely no sign of device number 8. So the next thing I shall do is just double check that the device number select jumper has not been cut, setting it to device 9. In fact, we can test for device 9 fairly easily. No. Not sure where the jumper is on this board. So I have found the device select jumper on the circuit board, and there's a blob of solder on it, so it looks like it's been cut in the past and resoldered. Next thing I'll do is I'll test it with my Commodore 16 to see if this is a fault with the drive or with the +4. Commodore 16 connected. I sprayed some contact cleaner in the cartridge port on this unit and inserted and removed the cartridge a few times to hopefully clear any grot off the cartridge in this machine. So let's turn it on. So it seems to boot okay. Now, can we communicate with it? Now, there's a bit of a challenge with this Commodore 16. It has an internal device 8, and I don't know how that's connected. So if I do a load of a directory from device 8, I may well get the internal device talking to me. No, excellent. So that's a good sign. Obviously, the Commodore 16 is able to talk to the disk drive, just attempted to load the directory from a disk. Now, I said that there is an internal device 8 on this unit. I didn't fit it, but I'm assuming it's an SD to IEC device, and it's been connected to the IEC port on the Commodore 16. The Commodore 16 and Commodore +4s do have an IEC interface, as well as the ability to connect to 1551 via the cartridge port. But if there is a conflict between devices on the parallel bus and on the serial bus, the operating system, the kernel in these machines, will prefer the devices connected to the parallel bus, which is why we're able to look at device 8 being the disk drive right now. Let's put a disk in disk drive and try that DIR again. So for a disc, I have a remastered copy of the 1551 demo disc. Now, just before I insert this, I'm taking a quick look at the heads to make sure that the head's clean, and the head is clean, so I'm happy putting this disc in. So we'll try that directory listing again. Okay, we still have a problem. Now, what I don't know is whether this is, we have a failed drive mechanism, we have failed heads on the drive mechanism, or there is an alignment issue on this drive, or possibly on the drive I used to remaster this disc on. Before I go the whole hog and replace the drive mechanism, I'm just going to clean the heads. Even though they look clean, it's worth giving them a bit of a clean. The head mechanism itself seems to be moving just fine. I'm not sure there's any dirt really on there. No, definitely can't seem to read the disk. Let's try formatting the disk. If the format fails pretty much immediately, then that does suggest to me that we've got a read issue or a write issue with the head. Moment of truth. No. No, it's just stuck on track 1. It's either failing to write or failing to read the that track, and that format's failed. So my next step is to try a drive mechanism from my donor 1541. I have the donor drive mechanism installed, so I'll turn the drive on. It spins and stops. Spins and stops again. Let's try the disk format again. I have the donor drive mechanism installed. I know this is a good drive mechanism because I tested the 1541. It came in before filming today and it successfully loaded Arkanoid 2. So let's turn it on. It spins okay. Now I've noticed that every time I've turned the drive on, the drive light is not illuminated. Now the drive light does illuminate when the drive is being controlled by the computer, when it's active. So I'm guessing that's just a difference in behavior with the 1551 circuit board, that it doesn't, when it's turned on, when it's reset, doesn't light this LED. Turn on the Commodore 16. Right, let's try our 1551 demo disc again. File not found error. That's surprising. I'm going to try it again. Same problem. Okay. I will try formatting a brand new disk. So it's successfully formatting. I can see the head moving forward a track at a time as it writes and then verifies what it's just written, but it's stopped about halfway up the media. Now it moved another track up. Now it's banging the heads. Starting again. It's got a bit further now. I think that has failed. Yeah, it's not successfully formatted that disk. So I'm convinced that that original head mechanism was faulty, because we got much further in the format with this new drive mechanism, or replacement drive mechanism. But I'm thinking that there must be another fault with this drive, given that it cannot read my demo disk and it can't format a disk. Welcome back. I'm very suspicious of this disk drive. First of all, I've been able to read my demo disk. Turns out I don't know how to use basic 3.5 commands. You can't do a deload of $. There's probably a directory listing command, I don't know what it is. But loading the directory using the normal mechanism works just fine. Now, if let's say I load performance test. I'll run this. I'll put a different blank disk to the one I was trying to format earlier in. So the format is progressing normally. I can see the heads moving forward. We're probably about halfway through now. We're about track 30 now. So there we go, we're pretty much at the end now. I think that's the last track it's writing now. Now, the format has, I believe, succeeded successfully, but I'm getting unit is failing performance test. I'm wondering if, despite the fact that I think I've written a 1551 demo disk, it's expecting some nuance response from a 1541. Well, there's some difference in the responses between a 1541 and a 1551. I saw a similar sort of problem when I was doing a performance test of my 2031 drive. I think when I was doing it using a Commodore 64, so using a IEEE 488 adapter for the Commodore 64. So that's not necessarily a problem that system is not responding correctly to commands. It would say something different if the format had failed. If we continue, the rest of this testing succeeds. So I'll fast forward through the video so you don't have to sit and wait. So everything's worked fine apart from that initial problem. If we take a look at the directory listing of this disk that's just written, we see what we'd expect to see. So I don't really know quite what to think. I think the reason why the format wasn't working on the other disk was maybe there's something marginal about that disk. I was using a brand new KO disk, but I've had problems with some of the KO disks. So, and this is a Sony disk in here now, which seems to work better. So I'm at a bit of a loss to know whether this drive is working fine or not. I'd very much like to test it in the +4, so I'm going to try that again now, see if I can get it working with the +4. Right, Commodore +4 is back in the house. Let's try a directory listing. It's working now. Must have been well, I suspect it was a contact issue, and removing and reinserting the cartridge one more time fixed it. We'll try the performance test on this machine. Same error as on the Commodore 16, so we'll continue. As on the Commodore 16, that worked. While that was running, I had a look up to see what basic 3.5 command gives you a directory listing of the disk, and it's the directory command. I'm going to try the +4 basic demo. I guess we'll start with the color demo. Wow, look at all those different shades of color. I found Lemmings for the +4. Let's give it a go. Right, I better go and find my joystick. To finish this video off, I thought we'd compare the speeds of the 1551 and the 1541 disk drives. The plus 4 can cope with both 1551 and 1541s connected simultaneously. The 1551 is connected obviously via the cartridge parallel interface, and the 1541 is connected via the standard IEC bus on the plus 4. So I will load Lemmings from the 1551 to begin with. So this progress bar is zooming across the screen with the 1551, and it's done. Now with the 1541. To me, sitting here, that progress bar looks like it's going much more slowly this time. I'll find out when I edit the video just how much faster the 1551 was. Theoretically, as I said earlier, the 1551 is about 4 times the speed of the 1541. And we're done. I hope you enjoyed this quick look at a Commodore 1551 disk drive. It was my first time using and looking inside a 1551 disk drive. It's also my first time really using a plus 4 or Commodore 16 in anger. It's obviously a shame that the read-write head from this unit had failed, and I had to replace the drive mechanism with one that I cannibalized from a 1541, but I have a working 1551 to add to my collection, and obviously the black goes really well with the black of the plus 4 and the Commodore 16. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll consider subscribing. Until next time, rock on.